Hi, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you to the Physiological Society for having me here. I'll be talking about new models for sleep analysis based on ultra wearables, so-called hearables. I'd also like to thank the organizers for a wonderful meeting. I'm an engineer, so I've learned quite a lot for what I could, for what I could understand. And it's been a real challenge for me then to prepare a presentation which would be general enough for everybody to understand and hopefully to cover some of the use of hearables in sleep research. So that wouldn't be possible without my collaborators, starting from my postdocs and PhD students, some of whom are here, like Takashi Nakamura, Harry Davis, and such like, and also my medical collaborators, starting from our own Professor Mary Morel, who is here, all the way down to Yusuf Al-Qurashi. And it's not, Yusuf is here because he joined us last year or so. But there's quite a lot of basically, to do biomedical research, you need many, many medical collaborators. So again, our work on hearables was basically mostly tested on sleep. And here's one kind of motivational slide. So in my department at Imperial, we are famous for holography, like a Nobel Prize for Denis Gabor, also for basically selective auditory attention by Colin Cherry or digital filters. But here's something very, very interesting. So Denis Gabor actually invented holography about 20 years before he could prove the principle, because simply for that he needed a monochromatic laser light, and nobody could produce that light before semiconductors. So he had this theory in 1940s, and the good semiconductors came out in 1960s. So what he did is he had a light which he passed through a set of prisms in order to shine a loudspeaker. That loudspeaker was modulating the light and sending to a screen to produce a hologram. Okay. Now we don't have that luxury. So if you have an idea, you have to realize it almost immediately, because the momentum, the pace of development is very, very high. So you see in my presentation that we have done plenty of electronics, plenty of signal processing, plenty of delta collection, data analysis, and so on. And that's the way it is going these years. Okay, so I'm often asked, so what are the challenges of your disciplines in the 21st century? And so one of the challenges is maybe to blur the boundaries between ability and disability. And hopefully I'll be able to play this slide here. But here's one challenge which comes from the, I'll say Royal Brompton Hospital, but maybe I should say National Heart and Lung Institute. So in collaboration with Mary, there was this patient who suffered from sleep apnea. And obviously, in order to get diagnosed, he has to come to clinic. He's wearing the full sleep kit, and I should not spend any time explaining that here. And clearly, this is quite cumbersome. Okay, he's still looking very, very happy, but it's quite cumbersome for him to wear. So the question at that time was, would technology be possible? Maybe would you be able to make technology which would replace all this, maybe with one little sensor placed somewhere convenient? Okay. The second issue is that the development in sensing techniques only started maybe big time, some kind of 7-8 years ago. And I'll just play very quickly this video here where Channel 4 came to record an episode on music, so stress from music with us in 2011. And you'll see that in this, where's my cursor? In this video, oops, okay, something is, let's hope it works. It's maybe it's also my sound.
Those religious authorities
okay.
right can simply rearranging a few notes or a subtle change of tempo produce radically different physical responses. Psychologist Dr. Larry Parsons is looking for answers by seeing if he can measure music's effect on our body. team are wiring me up with receptors to monitor changes in my heart rate, breathing and sweating. They're even going to be measuring minute changes in my body temperature.
We have a thermal camera fixed here. It's going to be measuring any facial temperature changes.
There's been very little face heat map assessments of anybody listening to music as far as I know. And so you're a pioneering subject.
Okay, great. First, Larry plays me an up-tempo violin concerto by Mozart. It's written in a major key, usually associated with happy music.
Okay, so in the interest of time, all I want you to see here, to observe that all the sensors we have here are quite cumbersome. So there's a chest belt, and there's some driven right leg sensor, and there's EEG sensor, and so on, so on, so on. So if you want to have really effective interfaces, and big companies like Google and such like Apple are very much into your emotion in order to deliver content which matches your emotion. So this is not what you cannot do that. Still, in many labs, including ours, we have all these sensors, but definitely the drive is towards something unobtrusive, discreet, self-administered, and such like. The second, this slide added, basically inspired by the talk yesterday at 6 p.m. about visualizing music. And this is about some experiment from Tokyo where a PhD student in composition was performing a concert for the brain and orchestra. So they were recording his brain waves from this EEG cap, decoding them in a similar way like they did yesterday, and playing the chords, while the chamber quartet was following him. And the idea is, but maybe we can use technology to bridge the gap between, or blur the boundary between ability and disability. So some of the music is obviously abstract, but you'll see the 4 chords. Okay, so we can see them now. So 1, 2, 3, 4. So this is the heat map of EEG waves on the scalp. And then we have to convert the frequencies in EEG into so-called piano roll. And you have to stretch the frequencies a little bit. And that piano roll is then converted into MIDI. So clearly, even a supposedly disabled person who cannot communicate, write or speak or anything like that, should be able to compose music. Okay, so there's quite a lot to be done in the way of wearable sensing. And obviously, these days it's all about smart watches. And indeed, so with the smartwatch, and many people in this room have a smartwatch, you can definitely measure maybe how many steps you make, or maybe your pulse, maybe if you're lucky a little bit more, but not much more. But in order to discover the code secrets of mind and body, you need to record neural function, you need to record vital signs, including temperature, respiration, pulse, full ECG, and all the rest, which you cannot do with a simple monitor on your wrist. In addition, your arms are moving all the time in many activities, when you're walking, talking, or sitting, writing something, any other activity, and that movement of the arm affects the quality of sensing. So the real question is, so is there any other place, any other way where we can put a sensor which would faithfully measure your neural function, vital signs? And in our own work, some 10 years ago, we decided that should be the ear, and in particular the ear canal. The reason is because the ear has a constant position with respect to the vital signs, heart and lungs, and also the brain. So, of course, it's a little bit further from lungs and heart than normal sensors. It's close to the brain, obviously, but maybe from a different side than the standard scalp EEG. So clearly the signal is going to be weaker. So for that, you need to use machine learning and such like. But clearly, intuitively, it should be possible to record quite a lot of physiological signals from your ear canal. Okay, so that's one thing which is very, very interesting, and we showed that using some standard equipment like this biosignal amplifier. So I'm just going back to Denis Gabor and the fact that he had 20 years to develop the light. So this device cost us £10,000 and it's mains operated. So if our subject is walking around enjoying their daily life, there's absolutely no way that they can carry this biosignal recorder. So think about the sleep kit. You cannot really live your daily life all the time using sleep kit because it's just not convenient. And sleep kit still have battery, this doesn't. So we went on to develop our own biosignal recorder called the iAmp for some reason. So it's half of the matchbox size and has the same accuracy as this one. It cost us about £100 in discrete components. So that's the first major step we had to do to be able to perform these hearables, wearables, and such like, because at the moment there's definitely no way that you can record everything in a way similar to hearing aids, say, with electronics in your ear canal. So with that, and we are very, very, very happy with that. The reason I'm showing these components is that in the last slide, hopefully, I'll show you this current iteration where everything is packed on the ear shell. So we have 3 PCBs. One is with the battery, second with microcontroller and memory. So is it here? So the SD card, and third is with the analog to digital converter plotted against a pound coin. And just if you have any doubts, so we can really 3D print a very nice housing for it. And whatever this is, and this is something related to alpha rhythm in the EEG when subject closes their eyes. This is power spectrum frequency. So in red, we have our signal from our own amplifier. In the blue, signal from this very expensive amplifier, and clearly they're pretty well matched. Okay. So now the first step, we have an amplifier that we can put in a pocket or in a pouch around the neck, and we can walk around, and then hopefully we can wire people with some physiological sensors in order to record their activity. Okay, so why ear-EEG? So obviously EEG is important in sleep research because you use it for sleep staging. And this is the basic principle of EEG recording. And everybody here is familiar with that, so I'll just spend very little time. So synchronous activity of neurons produces electric field, which then goes through various membranes, cerebrospinal fluid, scalp to the sensor. So imagine if the activity is here again. So it would go through the brain, dura mater, cerebrospinal fluid, bone, and skin to the ear canal. So clearly the principle of recording EEG from the ear canal is not different from the principle of recording EEG from scalp. The difference is that this bone, temporal bone, is much thicker than scalp. So you would expect your signal to be weaker. So we didn't need much encouragement then to perform those recordings. And when you think about what do you need for EEG recording, so you need a sensor, which is electrode, you need some sort of preamplifier, you need digitizer, so analog to digital converter, and you need microcomputer or a computer. So what do you need? What do you have in hearing aids is pretty much the same. You have a sensor, which is a microphone, then you have a preamplifier, you have a digitizer, microcomputer. All that packed into tiny little hearing aid which sits in the ear canal. So that's why we went to hearing aid people, and these are typical ear shells from hearing aids. So in the eventual hearing aid, they cut off this bit which sits on the concha, and this bit here goes into the ear canal. So we started playing with various types of electrodes which you can put on the bit that goes into the ear canal. And it involved various, think of Jamie Oliver cookbooks. So you take these 2 ingredients, mix them well, then apply them to the ear shell, then bake them for 20 minutes at 200 degrees and check the impedances and all the rest. So these are many prototypes we produced. The upshot here is that indeed, so you can have a customized earpiece which undergoes the same process as the hearing aid. So you take the ear mold in a clinic, then you 3D scan it, 3D print it, equip with electrodes, put in the ear canal, and you need some wire which transmits data to a recorder. That recorder will be this small I-amp. So with that, you can then walk around, enjoy daily life or sleep, and record EEG. So it's very clear then in terms of performance. So this will be the standard EEG using EEG cap, which is quite cumbersome to administer. You need a skilled person. So the actual subject cannot do it through to some current wearable systems all the way through to ear-EEG. So clearly this will be much more convenient in terms of wearability because it's discrete, it's self-administered, unobtrusive, and such like. And in addition, the new generation are used to wearing some sort of earplugs. So if you go on the London Tube, then half of the people would have some sort of earplugs on. But the question is really about the performance, because yeah, you gain in one aspect, but definitely you drop a little bit of performance because your signal is weaker because of the temporal bone, and then you're able to capture very good brain waves close to the temporal lobe, so auditory cortex, and any other synchronous brain activity like alpha rhythms and any rhythms related to sleep, but maybe some very specific brain responses which require high spatial resolution, maybe not. Okay, so what is it we can record? So in the very initial stage, we recorded, say, people who after, I don't know, some time started blinking their eyes. So you can see that the AFZ recording on scalp would show clear eye blinks. The temporal T8 wouldn't, not much at least. The right ear EEG would not show any of those eye blinks. So that's both blessing but also a problem. It's blessing because for normal EEG, you would have to throw away epochs with eye blinks, which are artifacts. So in ear-EEG, you don't. But then if you'd like to do something which requires information about eye blinks, like maybe some aspects of sleep, then you would lose it. The second aspect here is the so-called alpha attenuation. So this is time, this is frequency. So after about 15 seconds, the subject closed their eyes, and you can see a clear alpha rhythm in EEG from 15 seconds onwards on scalp. You can see the same on the ear-EEG signal. So after 15 seconds, you have pronounced alpha. It's just that the alpha signal here is stronger because of the prevalence of red. So alpha here is definitely weaker. So it would be tempting to discard ear-EEG. Well, unless you look at the levels of blue. So your signal-to-noise ratio is the basically ratio of red to blue, as it were. So in scalp EEG, you have plenty of red, not that much blue. In ear-EEG, you have not that much red, but plenty of blue. So the red to blue is very similar on scalp to that on the ear canal. So although the signal is weaker, the signal-to-noise ratio is very similar, so the signal is perfectly useful. And there's some other brain responses like the auditory steady-state response at 40 Hz, which is clearly pronounced in ear-EEG, or steady-state visual evoked response. So response to blinking of various lights at different frequencies, whereby you could maybe be able to navigate a mouse or a cursor on the screen using EEG. Okay, so on my team, we always have at least one biophysicist because the worst kind of research we can do is trial and error. So we always have somebody from physics background who then tries to model propagation of physiological signals to the recording sites. In this case, the ear canals. So these two are the two dipoles of brain activity in the temporal cortex. This is parallel, this is perpendicular. And you can see all these equipotential lines, which means because of these lines, you can record EEG from scalp. But you can have those lines clearly in the ear canal. So clearly, there's physical meaning behind recording from the ear canal. The second thing is, okay, so we have seen that signal on scalp is stronger, but the signal-to-noise ratio is similar. So we again simulated a scenario where you have all these lights or power supplies, typical office environment. So these red dots here are dipoles or artifacts due to electromagnetic activity. And these artifacts clearly suppress the scalp EEG. Well, they affect very, very little the ear EEG. So this is why, so the ear canal is created as some sort of Faraday cage because it's a cavity surrounded by conductive tissue, various liquids, skin and such like, they're all conductive inside. So clearly this type of Faraday cage behavior protects the in-ear physiological electrical recordings from effects of the external artifacts. Okay, so now we know much, much more about the biophysics behind these recordings. The next question is, well, how deep should you put your earplug in the ear canal in order to record data faithfully? So this is again another simulation, and it's much better because over the years we started from this first one sphere model of the head, then two sphere, then three sphere. Then we got an MRI scan of a real head with real tissues, and then we inserted all the electric and magnetic parameters of the bones, tissues, arteries, brain tissue, cartilage, and such like. So this simulation shows that this is the percentage of suppression of external electromagnetic field, meaning artifacts, versus depth of earplug in the ear canal. And you can see that after about 6-7 millimeters, you end up with only 5% of the external magnetic field affecting your data. So hey, that's something very, very interesting. So now both in terms of biophysics and our measurements, we can prove that it's possible indeed to record EEG from the ear canal. Okay, so with that, we very happily knocked on Mary's door and said, okay, shall we record some sleep to see if there's any future of hearables in sleep recordings? And that was as far back as 2003 or 4, I think, where we recorded initially 4 subjects during afternoon nap. And we still had those hard shells in people's ears. And this is the time waveform of what we were hoping would be sleep stage 2, so something like a delta. And clearly it's not a delta. And it took us a long time to realize that actually these peaks here correspond to pulsation, to pulse. So what happens if you have a hard shell in your ear canal, then the electrode also senses any tiny pulsation of any blood vessel in the ear canal. And we have those peaks due to pulse. So what shall we do? We either stop doing any sleep research using EEG, or we use this maybe for a good cause. So the optimist would say, hey, but at least you have pulse for free. So you don't need any smartwatch or anything like that. You can get pulse for free from an earplug. But okay, the downside is that you cannot record delta. So we then went, again, tried to be very, very scientific, and we then examined many materials on a stress-strain gauge. If you remember Young's modulus, brittle versus elastic, such like. So the viscoelastic curves for those hard shells were like here, in megapascals here. So we went down to examine many soft memory foams. So why memory foam? Because once you insert it in the ear canal, it would adopt to the shape of the canal and relax. So it wouldn't pressurize at all the ear canal, wouldn't cause any discomfort. And in the end, so the most important thing here, these are megapascals, these are kilopascals. So the pressure to your ear canal is 1,000 times lower if you use a soft shell. And indeed, so this recording is from the right ear, I think, using hard shell. This recording is from the left ear using soft shell. You can see that this is clearly EEG, while that's pulsation. and you can see that in the spectrum. Okay, let's now show what we have in terms of this soft viscoelastic foam. So in terms of eventual use of this type of device, again, so if you want general public to use it using hard shells, because every ear canal is bent in different ways, they will have first to go to an auditory clinic to get an imprint. So put putty in, get an imprint of the ear canal, 3D scan it, 3D print it, and so on. So it's quite cumbersome and expensive. While this foam, all we have to do is to squeeze it, put it in the ear canal, and wait a little bit to relax. So what we did was then to be produced a foam with some soft electrode and a very special microphone just beneath the electrode. So this microphone is actually a mechanical sensor. It's a MEMS, micromechanical device. And to be able to record pulse, basically, because you see with the soft foam, you don't record pulse because the pulsation of blood vessels doesn't mean anything. But with this mechanical sensor, which listens through the electrode, you still record pulsation, which is important. And some of our first cumbersome sensors look like that. So you have a foam, you have some wires, and the signal would go into that I-amp, the little amplifier we recorded. But still, we produced. But still, you can walk around, you can live your daily life and record your physiological data. So these are some other devices out there. This is the C-Grid from Oxford, where you can record EEG and some other physiological signals from a sensor behind the ear. It's a very interesting device, of course. Our hope here is that the concha and the space here just out of the ear canal, there's enough room to integrate any electronics, maybe wireless transfer information and such like. And the other thing is that basically the ear is underexplored. So this is nothing else but the scalp EEG. It's on scalp. It's just in a very specific place. This is maybe more interesting in terms of, so everybody has some sort of earphones, and a lot of them are connected with smartphones. So there's an opportunity then to combine the wireless buds technology with physiological sensing to produce something bigger. Okay. Now, I think I was talking for a long time, so I can show some results. So again, this result just showed that even if you wear our sensor for over 10 hours in the office, the impedances of the sensors keep quite good. So between 3, 4 up to 10 kilo, which is fine. So this is to show that sometimes the ear-EEG signal is weaker, like here in red, compared to the scalp EEG, and this is for auditory steady-state response. Sometimes it's stronger. So this is the steady-state visual evoked potential at 16 Hertz, which you don't have on scalp. And this is another than alpha experiment where, again, after 30 seconds, somebody closed their eyes, and you can see that in this new prototype, the alpha signal is much stronger than before, and the noise is almost gone. Okay, so what else can you do with this type of technology? So because the microphone is a mechanical sensor, you can record these, we call it MPG, mechanical plethysmogram, and you can clearly recognize the dichrotic notch, which has medical value. Now, if you compress this signal, you get that. So the red is MPG, mechanical sensor, the black is ECG, and the blue is the signal from that chest belt, like on that lovely chap in the first slide who was going to sleep clinic. So you can see that both ECG and MPG are modulated. You have respiration in the envelope. So you can use digital technology to remove that envelope and get respiration for free. So this is what we have at the moment. So we have respiration, we have pulse, we have EEG, and we also have sound, because that microphone effectively records sound. So this is, again, time frequency, and somebody was reading something from Charles Dickens's novel, and you can see that when you marginalize, so integrate vertically, you get very, very nice respiration patterns. So this is speech. So it's very interesting that this is speech from the external microphone, again, time frequency, speech from in-ear looking microphone. You can see that you can record speech from the ear canal, which means that effectively you could record snoring too. Of course, it's a little bit attenuated here. Okay, now is it red or just amber? Okay, so then go to many more models. We have now a model of the whole body with all the parameters, all the organs. So whatever we do, we first try to see how that would physically look like. And this is the model of propagation of ECG obviously from heart to any part of the body. And you'll see how you can recognize those. Oops, something is happening here. Maybe go back. You can recognize the R peak. So this is below, above, front, back, left, right electrodes. You can recognize that when you approach the R peak, the potential difference becomes much, much, much stronger. Okay. So I need to learn how to, third time lucky, I guess. Okay. Keep it here. So when you approach the R peak, I'll then okay, we are lucky almost. Okay. So you can see that at the time of R peak, the potential difference between the left and right hand side on the body is very, very high. That's why you can record ECG. But it's not the case on the head, so the potential difference is much, much, much stronger. Interestingly, potential difference on the wrist is quite high too, and this is the principle of the new Apple Watch. Basically, you would have one electrode on the bottom of the watch, the other on the crown, so you'll bring your finger here and record ECG. Okay, I'll cut the story short, and I'll just show you how the full in-ear ECG looks like. So the top is the ECG from lead 1 on chest. The bottom is the ECG from the 2 ear canals, obviously symmetric. So clearly the amplitude here is 1000, the amplitude here is 20, so it's 50 times weaker signal and much, much, much noisier. So with little data analysis, you can see that the ECG cycle from chest is very, very similar to the ECG cycle from the ear canal. Okay, and I'd just like to mention one or two quick ideas in sleep research, obviously done with the lab of Professor Morel and with Youssef Al-Qureshi, who is here, and Takashi, my student. So you ask yourself, okay, so what's the difference between the time waveform of the scalp EEG and in-ear EEG? So there's some difference. Of course, they're recorded from different sites, but still, most of the sleep features are there. You can pretty well record sleepiness, or we call it fatigue here. So when another student of mine volunteered not to sleep overnight, and he was playing some computer game, making errors, those sleepiness is associated with the elevated alpha rhythm in the EEG. So you can clearly see that the elevation of alpha rhythm corresponds on scalp EEG here to many errors, is the same in ear EEG. So clearly there's one application. Second is maybe sleep monitoring. So this is the initial research from 4 subjects, daytime naps. So what is important here is that the accuracy was 78.5%. Against the scalp EEG, and kappa was 0.64, which is good agreement. Other studies include drowsiness from ear EEG from 23 subjects, and again, so what is important here is compared with scalp EEG, basically. So the accuracy for scalp EEG was 88%, ear EEG 82%. Kappa for scalp was 0.76, here 0.6. We now have some more comprehensive studies for overnight sleep. And I'd just like to show that depending on the subject, so sometimes for this subject, the accuracy for scalp was 99, for the ear 72. For another subject, accuracy for scalp was 79, for ear 89. So you can expect many, many things. So with that, basically, I would like to conclude my presentation. So we clearly need to move towards hearables, and there's many, many areas of research, medical research, we can cover with hearables because they're just convenient to wear, and with the advance in technology, you'll be able to wear them over days. Thank you very much.
Excellent, thank you for that. I think the obvious question is who will win the ear race, Oxford or Imperial? Do we have any questions?
Can you hear normal breathing with your microphone? That's like normal breathing, not snoring. Like
you can, yes.
You can. So that's, I think, a better proxy of breathing than the EKG variations, because the EKG variations, it might be a problem with the, depending of the, if you have heart disease, or a lot of older people have PVCs and all kind of things that can kind of, so if you have breathing through the microphone, it's even better.
You can breathe through two microphones, and it's very, very accurate. And I agree that respiration through respiratory sinus arrhythmia works for younger people.
Yeah.
For middle-aged, a bit older, it's a little bit problematic.
Yeah. But that's nice. I hope the second big problem of course, I mean, you know that this entire field, one of the bigger problem is comfortable, is how you can make that like really, really comfortable. So do you have data on what % of people can tolerate it, or how do you see this? This is a big field in everything, whether or not you put, helmets, you put, some people are thinking of doing sensorless, like beds that record movements and all those things and sound, others with, and ear-EEG is definitely one of the big contender in this area, but I know that one of the problems is how comfortable it is. So do you have some idea of how to solve that problem, or do you think that's something do you have data, or?
We don't have.
It's a tough question, I know, but
no, it's a very natural question. Thank you for that. So it's pretty clear that I'll just show. So at the moment we're trying to mount, and we have done it, any sensor we can imagine. So PPG, temperature, movement, ECG, everything on the ear canal. So the problem is that all these sensors are pretty hard. And it's much more natural than to put them on kind of semi-hard shell, because when you 3D print a shell, you can choose the viscoelasticity of the resin. There's some resins which are quite flexible, okay, which is very, very good. But then the more sensors you have, the more electronics. So you need to integrate this type of board onto the shell. And I'll just show our latest prototype, which is working, at least in the lab. So this is the standard sleep kit, and we would like to replace a lot of that if we can with that. It's an ear shell. This is a coil, okay, because we decided to have option of rechargeable battery on the earplug. So this coil obviously can be removed, and you can put any standard battery, and all the electronic sensing is basically here, and it's basically integrated on the ear shell. Maybe it's clearer here how it looks like. So to answer your question, so our current prototype obviously has all the electronics on the ear shell, and perhaps the best compromise would be a little bit harder outer shell, because it wouldn't really affect concha too much, and maybe fully viscoelastic or a bit softer inner shell, and obviously with an air duct. So whenever people complained about wearing sensor after 5-6 hours, because obviously they do any daily activities, they eat, they speak, they chew, whatever. So there's a little vacuum effect between the tight fit of the viscoelastic foam and the ear canal, which then can a little bit bruise the skin. So, but with an air duct, basically a simple stent, like in hearing aids, that is resolved. So I agree, that's an interesting issue, which maybe it's not a big deal for laboratory or prototype type of research, but for a commercial product, you would like to be able to wear this over days to also capture circadian rhythm and all the rest that other speakers have been talking about. Yes. Yeah.
Excellent, thank you. One more question, and then we'll move on.
Yeah, thank you, Professor Mandic. How do you see like the potential to integrate this ear-EEG with other products like the Apple Watch and other detection products? Yeah.
Okay, so that's again an excellent question. So, so this part here actually, cell phone wireless. Let's go here. So the wireless. So this is the earpiece with the electronics, and this coil for charging battery. Again, we don't need coil. So this part here is responsible for wireless transfer. So clearly, if you're having smartwatch and you like to reduce the consumption of power on the earpiece, you wouldn't record pulse from the earpiece. You would record it from smartwatch. On our earpiece, we also have the movement accelerometer. So if you like to reduce power consumption, you record the acceleration from the watch, and you measure whatever you can from the ear sensor. So temperature, ECG, maybe full ECG, EEG, and so on. So there's clearly a compromise. The second problem with wireless transfer is that in environments like lecture hall or hospitals, they don't like it. So they don't like any wireless channel in hospital, for example. And also in this type of environment, so more than 4 Bluetooth channels would be too many. There will be congestion. So you have to be a little bit careful with wireless. You can do that maybe in your home, but in many environments you can't. This is why we also record to an SD card, like in cameras. It's somewhere here. So the device can serve as a data logger, as well as like a holder, as well as a kind of continuously transmitting device. So the whole area of connectivity has not been regulated properly yet. So there's some standards. You have to follow some standards, like Bluetooth follows some standards and so on. But kind of large-scale connectivity has not been regulated yet, and it will be in some time. The good thing about this prototype is that the electronics obviously stays the same, and the advances in the new Bluetooth standards, new batteries, and so on, just work in our favor. And the last thing I would like to mention is that all these components are, again, discrete components, so off-the-shelf components, or semi-off-the-shelf components, which are much. So this device does exactly the same as the iAmp, our amplifier. It's just much smaller. And with this, you'll be able to walk around, no problem. The next stage is so-called bare dies. So any electronic component here comes with some housing. So each component comes with all these kind of hundreds of little connectors and housing. So the so-called bare die is the same component, just without this housing here. So everything is much smaller. So this pretty straightforward one-to-one, basically mapping from what we have now to something that's even much smaller, which is, I guess, routine for electronics engineers.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Thank you.